Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Foresight Radio Podcast, where we speak with industry leaders and innovators who are taking steps to make the senior living industry better. Our goal is to disrupt the industry and leave it better than we found it. Now on with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Foresight Radio. I am your host, Rachel Hill, the creative director here at Senior Living Foresight, and I have a super special guest today. I'm so glad I got connected with this gentleman. He is doing something really, really cool. I'm so happy to let him dive in and tell you a little bit about himself, how he got into the field. I am here with DeLon Canteberry. Sir, how are you? I want to let you tell your story and introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, hey, it's really an honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Rachel, and to the viewers. Appreciate you listening, listeners, etc. I'm Dr. DeLon Canteberry. I am a board-certified geriatric pharmacist and founder of Geriatrics, and we focus on providing medication consults with a focus on getting people off of harmful medications. So we implement de-prescribing, which is the safe removal of harmful medicines, especially in our seniors that have the most over-medication out of any population in the U.S.
Thank you for that backstory. And first of all, let me backtrack. Dr. Canteberry, my apologies. I cannot skip over a doctor in front of someone's name. That's just rude. So
Yeah,
let's backtrack.
Just for the one time. Just for one time.
Let's hit the rewind.
It's all good.
So I love this. I love the concept of, de-prescribing. It's not saying, at least from my perspective, that all medication is invaluable. Clearly, I think certain ones serve a purpose. But I do think particularly that, and not just in geriatrics, but I want to let you specifically speak to in the geriatric realm. I do think there is such a huge tendency to throw a medication at a problem before getting to the root of something. And at least for me, I think that's really where I see the problem lies. So, DeLon, I want to let you kind of dive into specifically, where do you see this and why do you see this happening in geriatrics? That's really fascinating to me, why this particular demographic is getting overprescribed. So I'd love to kind of kick things off with that, please.
Beautiful. Yeah. So it's a multi-layered question, but it's so true. Unfortunately, we have a habit to want to just prescribe and prescribe and prescribe without really thinking about a timeline on when to stop. We're not trained to do that. So we, not even on the prescriber end, do that, but even as just being an American citizen, right? We want things quick, fast, and now. So some people just want a pill. They want to get it over with. And we don't think to hit the root cause of the issue, or we don't think to go to that holistic approach that I think is sorely lacking in our healthcare system. And how this really dives into our seniors starts with one, the fact that they are older means they're more likely to have more chronic conditions and their bodies change with time. So the way they even respond to medicines aren't even the same, right? When this happens, your drugs don't work the same.
Absolutely.
Your drugs don't work the same. Your body doesn't react the same. Your side effect profile is completely different. And so you're more at risk to harm. And so what happens is in our clinical system, basically someone's having issues with, say, their feet swelling, right? So we put someone on a diuretic, which is a water pill to help get rid of the feet swelling. And now we find that the diuretic is causing low sodium, right? Or something. And now you end up using another prescription to treat that other issue. And then that other issue has another drug that has another side effect. And this is what's called the prescribing cascade, where basically we're treating side effects of a medication as a brand new condition. And when this happens, unfortunately, it comes from, let's be honest, the fact that most providers aren't seeing patients for no more than 15 to 18 minutes at a time. And it's maybe 6 months, every 4 months, and you can barely get in. Let's be honest, getting a doctor is going to take you months to be seen.
Yes.
So there's this time crunch. And then there's a lack of prioritizing looking at the medicines. We don't even use pharmacists the way we're intended to use. let's be real. Everyone thinks of a pharmacist as someone who is giving you pills, putting your name on a bottle, and giving you a smile and a white coat. And we're some old guy in the back of a pharmacy. Like, there's so many roles that we have to play. So we have to break out this mold of thinking we need a pill for every ill.
Ah, you're so good. I love that. Well, gosh, there's so much you just said there that I wanna kind of dissect, right? So
Sure.
you're getting at a couple of really huge issues here. So one, you're looking at the concept of prescribing more medication for a
Mhm.
side effect of a medication that you've
Yeah.
already given, right? So I
Right.
definitely want to sort of talk about how do we almost start to backtrack from that
Mhm.
and kind of
Mhm.
reverse that. And then the
Yeah.
other thing it sounds like this is so fascinating to me is one, obviously the training process of our physicians, right? Like
Sure.
I'm not in that field, but I obviously want the best care possible and I want that attention. But where's that balance when you have so many patients to see, but do, still obviously your heart, you want to give that proper care, your,
Sure.
Hippocratic oath, do no harm. So
Mhm.
how do you balance that? One, how do you start again walking back from over prescribing? And then two, give the most efficient care you can in the
Yeah.
most limited amount of time. That's a tall task.
It's extremely tall, and it's frankly why our healthcare system is breaking at the seams. We aren't focusing and honestly reimbursing for value-based care. We're focused on getting as many people in as quick as possible to fill this bed so we can keep these copays coming and keep the machine of medicine working. That's the problem. We're not focusing on quality metrics that lead to substantial lasting impact for our seniors. So that's the dark side of this, that frankly it's a business, and if you don't meet your quota, you don't meet your revenue, you're not going to be in business. So that's what we've been pretty much taught to think. But let's get to the core issue here. Deprescribing isn't really like a new catch-all term. It's literally been around for quite a while. The issue is we don't really prioritize it as a means of care. We don't see it
Mm.
as important. And so when it comes to seniors, especially if they're taking more than 5, 7 meds at a time and they're not at goal, they're having all these side effects or bladder issues or what have you, there needs to be the use of a pharmacist before a prescription is written. That's like common sense. There needs to be someone consulting on the drug. And the sad truth is, I love our doctors, they're brilliant, but they only have 6 weeks of pharmacology in medical school. Like, they don't know the drugs. It's not a secret. They say it to me all the time. It's like, look, we don't study this. Y'all do. Y'all figure that out. But we're the ones who know the drug interactions. We know the side effect profiles. We know how to taper the drugs. We know what dose is appropriate. And so think about it. If you have a pharmacist involved before you're even writing the scripts and just say, hey, what do you think? We can prevent all these errors from really happening, but we don't. We don't want to pay pharmacists to be put into that type of model. And it's only what, 2% of pharmacists who actually work in physician offices, which is crazy out of the 330,000 we have. So again, there are multiple issues here, but I'll also make sure to highlight that we don't even teach deprescribing. This is like new to people. It's
Hmm.
been around, but it's new to have a concept of literally strategically using science and evidence-based regimens to get people off of these meds. And that is precisely what I teach in our deprescribing accelerator program, that I'm using to coach more nurses, more clinicians, more senior facing organizations on how to make this a sustainable, lasting impact and profitable. So it is possible. We just got to get out of the way the other healthcare machine keeps on working. It's sick care. It's not healthcare.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And that number is staggering. Did you say one more time the percentage of pharmacists that aren't utilized
Yeah,
before prescribing? Was that, did you say only 2%?
2%. 2% of pharmacists work in a physician's office. And that doesn't even mean they're looking at the meds before being prescribed. They may just be there to do
They're just
something
there working.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fat. Because like
So
going
yeah.
back to what you said previously, like, yeah, I 100% like on a personal note from picking up my medication, it's like, yes, I walk to the back of my Rite Aid. I,
Yep,
you
yep,
know, I say hello to Joe and Steve, and I pick up what I need to pick up, and I
yeah.
keep it moving,
Keep it
right?
moving. Yep.
And that is that's devastating that someone that has studied for so long and is so well versed in this specific area of study
Right.
isn't
Mhm.
being utilized to their full capability, because you're almost getting to a point where we can, like you said, it's not going to be sick care. We could have preemptive, like a preemptive strike on something before even prescribing anything.
Yeah, that's really half the problem. We don't reimburse pharmacists for this service either. So we don't even get paid to do this. Everything you see at the pharmacy counter, we just get paid to dispense. We don't get paid to consult people. We don't really get paid for flu shots. We don't get paid for really anything that we're forced to push. We're just kind of trapped. But we are brilliant and have the power to become deep prescribers if given the opportunity. So again, it's a system-wide issue. It's not really all the provider's fault because they're kind of just doing what they're doing too. Their job is to treat and to turn over patients as much as possible and make sure they're living a quality, healthy life. I can't knock them for that. And we all want that at heart, but our system doesn't do it the way it should be. And that's where some significant policy change needs to take place.
Yeah, it's this unfortunate vicious cycle, right? That you almost like can't escape until you make some real tough changes. And I love, what you're doing and what your approach and what you're teaching. So I want to break down deprescribing a little bit here and kind of what
Up
that
to
looks like. So what I'd love to hear is, I guess it would depend on a specific medication. So is this sort of weaning someone off of something 3 months, 6 months, a year, and that would just vary? And how does this process kind of start?
Yeah, yeah. So, like you said, definitely depends on the med. It depends on the situation, the health conditions, the most pressing side effects a patient may have. But deprescribing is a multi-layered process. And the first thing that needs to happen, there needs to be an established line of trust and empathy with where the patient's at. Like if you don't even understand where they're coming from or why they're doing it this way, or maybe their history, it's going to be real hard to convince someone to take them off a med. And it's because they're taught to think that they need this to live. That's the problem. We're taught to think you have to have this to survive. And it's not always the case. Now, there are some meds, life-saving, completely necessary, wouldn't want you to stop. But there is, again, a process. And that process, again, is meticulous. Um, it's a reiterative process. It's like you have to kind of do multiple steps. There needs to be trust, there needs to be empathy, and then there needs to be provider buy-in. There needs to be a risk benefit analysis. Like, do you really need to be on that med? You really need to taper, and it depends on the drug, right? A lot of times we'll find meds that have people have been on for decades, and no one has batted an eye to question, hey, why are you still on this? Do you really think you still have heartburn from 15 years ago? Like, do you really still think you need that blood pressure med that you've been controlled for 20 years? You could probably get off of some of them with the right supervision. So again, I'm not telling people to just stop meds. I'm telling people to push back and ask questions. If you are taking more than 5 or 7 meds, you need a med review. Talk to a pharmacist for free. You can always talk to me, but more importantly, ask with your next doctor's visit or in your e-chart, what can I do to get my loved ones safely off of some of these meds? What changes can I make in my diet and lifestyle to get me off of some of these meds? If you are interested, and if you are, there's always a way to do that.
Yeah, and I want to talk specifically, in about some of the resources that you offer. I know you do a lot of coaching and you give out a lot of information
Mhm.
on this topic of deprescribing. And so where do you kind of tell people, I guess again going back to the basics, that you want to advocate for a senior in your life that maybe they are unwilling to speak up or afraid to or not sure how to? There's so many
Yeah,
varying
yeah.
factors. So how would you encourage someone to start being a resource, or where do they start?
The first thing is to have an accurate and up-to-date medication list. And you want to have everything on a paper or wherever you keep, but have all the over-the-counter medications, have all those vitamins, all the supplements, all the prescriptions, all the ointments, eye drops, shampoos, medicated lotions, every single thing that goes or touches their body regarding medicine needs to be documented. That needs to be in one list and it needs to be, fairly accurate. Like, is your patient actually taking it? And then that's another barrier is here are the meds. Are they actually taking it the way that it's intended and directed? I so many times you have people who take a medicine that's supposed to be twice a day, once a day. They're like, oh, I didn't feel like doing it twice. I just took both at the same time. It's like, well, no, that's not the same. And that's maybe why you're not hitting your goal of lowering your sugars, right?
Mm.
There are little nuances with each drug, but the first thing is easy. It's is your loved one on more than 5 or 7 medications? That should be your red flag number one. And if they are, it's time for a medication review. And the goal should be 5 or 7. Why 5 or 7? Because statistically speaking, when older patients take more than 5 medications, their risk of harm significantly increases. Risk of falls, risk of hospitalizations, risk of side effects, risk of drug interactions, all across the board. And that's statistically proven. And then we get more to the 10s and 20s, it's tripled and quadrupled. So that's number one. Number two, it's getting a med review from a trained professional. Another thing you can do is if your loved one is on Medicare, there's something called an annual wellness visit, which is required yearly for you to be done. With that annual wellness visit, Medicare actually pays for your provider to do a full medication review. And I don't mean, are you still taking this? Are you still taking that? I mean a thorough analysis of what you're supposed to be taking. And to be honest, people don't really notice. They don't really utilize this. They just assume they just go to the doctor and get seen. But you can literally have a visit tailored to just the meds. That's the whole point, but it's not always used. So that's another avenue that people can use for their loved ones who are on Medicare. Just request it, and it's required by law for it to be done. So that's one thing you can also do. And of course, the easiest one is making a pharmacist your best friend, right? You gotta have a pharmacist in your corner. Like not only can they save you money and really time and headache, but they're gonna know what's in your best interest objectively. Okay, that's
Mm.
our job is to be objective. It's not to push big pharma on you. It's to literally come up with ways you can really fix some of your barriers to care. So that's an easy fix, really.
I love that. That's such a tangible takeaway. And I think so much of it's just I think what you're getting at or what I'm seeing is like just start asking the
Yeah,
questions.
ask those questions, man. Ask
Yeah.
those questions. You gotta
Being
advocate for yourself because no one else will, unfortunately.
and being curious exactly. And I think being curious actually really works in your favor, particularly when it comes to, what you or your loved one is being prescribed.
Yeah.
And Dylan, I love what I hear so much when you talk about, what you do and this industry and our seniors. I hear so much heart. So I want to know how you got into this field and where this drive came from. And you put so much attention and time into this. You do a lot of work outside of like your typical, quote unquote 9 to 5, right? You create a
Yeah.
lot of content around this, and we'll get to, before we wrap up, where people can find all of your content and resources. But I would love to hear your backstory. How did you get into
Sure.
this?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's kind of a twofold story. I got into this space first with really my grandmother who had dementia, and she had mild dementia while she was in New York. My family was in Atlanta, and well, she started to significantly decline in her care, and we weren't sure what the cause was. It got so bad that her behavioral symptoms, her acting out, her whatever, led to the nursing home actually kicking her out. And we had to take her in and move her from New York to Atlanta. And when that happened, now my parents were thrown into the caregiver role. I wasn't a pharmacist yet. I was finishing up undergrad in college at Emory. And well, it was really tough seeing what my parents had to go through, trying to maneuver this, trying to, well, figure things out while being full time employees, getting care for her. And after about 4 months, we found that her being home was still getting worse, and we didn't know what the cause was. And eventually, upon getting a refill of the medication, we found that the pharmacist found, my mom was disgruntled. It was like, look, my grandma keeps wandering around at night. She keeps waking me up at 3 a.m. She's irritable. So it's emotionally taxing for everyone. But the
Mhm.
pharmacist advocated, and she found that there was one medication that may be causing harm. And once we looked into it, we discovered that this medication was given to my grandma just to chemically sedate and control her while she was in a nursing home. So here they are giving her the same medicine that's slowly killing her. And we had no clue all this time. And once we tapered that medicine, like after 2 weeks, she could pretty much resorted back to her baseline mildly dementia self, mild cognitive impairment self, instead of
Yeah.
severe. So that was something that lit a fire in me, because how many people are falling through the cracks of our health system? Like, how many people have this situation and you realize this could have been all been prevented had someone given a little extra care? the that person did not care about my grandma. The nursing home did not care,
Mm.
and they caused the harm. And that showed me that there is such a gap in the senior care space on how we leverage and use pharmacists, but really patient advocates, period, right? Caregiver advocates, period. Caregivers are the unsung heroes of this country who still are doing all this work, time, and energy and emotional toll and don't get the support they need. So that's part of why I started this company. And to support those people, to give that advocacy, to give that voice. And then secondly, I uh, I actually worked as a retail pharmacy manager with Walgreens, so I know how those games are. I know how that is, and I ran a team, did it for 5 years after finishing school, and I worked in a very rural community where majority of my patients were seniors, and I learned how much I did not know anything about senior care and the medications and how it works in their bodies. I didn't have a clue. So because I didn't know how to treat my patients to the best of my ability, I said, all right, let me study this and get a credential in geriatric pharmacy
Oh,
while I'm
wow.
in Walgreens, and just to challenge myself. And then I started seeing the patterns of, whoa, I did not know what I was doing. There was so much more to it than just like, oh, this is duplicate therapy. Like, there's so many layers to this issue, and we unfortunately don't do our seniors a good service in this country. We kind of let, if you're old, we don't care about you. We have that. We don't want to say it, but it's true. We don't
Mm.
really care at all. In fact, there's a movie called I Care a Lot on Netflix, which kind of spoofs that mentality of nursing homes as a pill mill. So it's a whole nother story. But needless to say, I kept seeing Black, Latino, and Indigenous patients that were particularly older who had the most issues at my pharmacy counter. And it was like simple stuff that could have been switched, like a brand to a generic, or this person
Mm.
doesn't have transportation. So why do you think they're going to get a refill? They can't even afford transportation to come here. So there were so many social barriers that I got depressed. I got anxious and angry and hated myself. I hated my patients. I hated my team. I hated what I was doing because I felt I was a part of the problem. And truthfully, I wasn't living in alignment with what I was supposed to be doing as a clinical pharmacist. So that got me in a dark place. And I had to finally ask myself, what am I going to do to be happy?
Mm.
I started looking at what I loved. What I love to do is community service and advocating for those who don't have a voice. That's like my thing. So I decided to start volunteering with this credential with geriatrics. So there was this cool nonprofit nearby, and I said, "Hey, I want to be a part of your formulary team." So what we did was we helped develop uh, drug plans for Medicare patients who are in the coverage gap and can't afford their meds. We created a formulary to help assist them with payments with a copay card. So we were able to kind of use some pharmacoeconomics and do what's in the best interest for our seniors and save them some money. So
Mm.
that was cool. And that was like, wow. this is amazing. Why aren't more people doing this? Why isn't this the standard of care? And so I said, you know what, I'm going to emulate that. And that is how we have geriatrics today. I eventually stepped down from that Walgreens position. I started volunteering left and right in my local derm community. And I started to, well, advocate for seniors, going to nursing homes, going to adult daycare centers, speaking at caregiver conferences, being a resource. And it kept reiterating my purpose of this is needed. Why didn't I meet you before? That was like my favorite quote was like, why haven't I met you before? I would
Mm.
love to have you when my uncle wasn't here, like, or there were so many people I know need this. So I'm just like, man, there's so much opportunity here, not just for the greater good, but pharmacists need to be seen in this light. And that's why I decided to make this my calling. And unfortunately, third to that story, what solidified my calling was having a patient who was on 36 medications. Okay.
Woo.
36 medications. And we were hired to do a medication review. We were able to literally do what that pharmacist did for my grandma. And we de-prescribed her down to 8 medications with her doctor. So that was a huge win. And this
Oh
woman
my
was in
God.
terrible shape, like irritable, angry, lethargic, just kind of drooling in her chair every day, didn't really want to live, didn't have any will. We got her back to her normal self in about a month. And we
Oh my God.
also were able to prove in the court of law, this is where the story gets real dark. Her family was trying to involuntarily commit her into a nursing home. And they basically knew she was rich. So they were trying to seize her assets. And the only one who didn't believe that it was her was the daughter who hired me. And that, my friend, is the evil side where half her family wanted to take her house, her money, um, and make her look incompetent. Um, but we were able to, with my service, prove that it's the medications, it's not her, and we were able to get the court case dropped completely. So
That's incredible. Talk about now again, you brought up that movie I Care a Lot, which is like basically a satire on all of this. But
correct.
if you hear this podcast and have not watched that movie,
Mhm.
please, it is eye-opening.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh. And it sounds to me like you just had so many just aha moments kind of
yeah,
throughout your career so far as a pharmacist. That's
yeah,
incredible. And I think what I love so much about it is you've taken sort of these really tough realities
yeah,
of your field and even some of the misconceptions and really are reframing that and putting it in this beautiful light that can really do some good. So we are coming up on time. I could talk to you so much more. I have so many
yeah.
questions, but
Sure.
you're a beautiful resource, a beautiful light in this industry. Could you tell people, please, DeLon, where they can find you
Yeah,
and more resources and your content?
yeah, absolutely. I'm all over every social media platform. You could search geriatrics, GeriatrX as in x-ray.org. But you can Google that. You'll find my name, DeLon Canteberry, pretty distinct. And I'm all over LinkedIn, Instagram. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. You can search geriatrics or my name. Um, or, of course, just Google. You'll find me everywhere. But yeah, yeah, it's everywhere.
Fantastic. And I will share a few of those links when we get this out here, when we get the episode out on all of our social platforms, because I think Dr. Canterbury is such a amazing resource and it's honestly just food for thought, again,
Mhm.
in advocating for the senior in your life, thinking about the world of medication and prescribing, over prescribing, what that looks like and sort of how to reframe that and keep our loved ones healthy. I think that's the most important part. And I think anyone that gets involved in senior care, you know, the ultimate goal, hopefully, is to have them be healthy and happy. And I
Yeah.
think the pivots that you can make by adjusting medications are huge. So I am so grateful for the work that you're doing and the resource that you are. So Don, thank you for joining me for this episode and sharing about what you do. And I just, again, I think you're an incredible resource. So thank you. Thank you.
No, pleasure to be here, and thank you for your time.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys. We will catch you in another episode of Foresight Radio. We release every other Wednesday, so please subscribe. Only 5-star reviews, please, no less.
No
And
less.
thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one, guys.
Thanks for listening to Foresight Radio. You can go ahead and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. That's Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and of course, you can listen directly on our website. Thanks for listening, and thanks for joining the conversation. We'll talk to you soon.